I wanted to take some time to talk about The Amazing Digital Circus, episode 9, and the implications of what it all really means in the end. And that, well, I think that all of the characters will eventually abstract one way or another. There were a couple of scenes that kind of make the case for this. It begins with Pomni, I think, saying in episode 8 that they're all going to abstract one day when they were trying to provoke Cain into acting out. In episode 9, when Gangle finally is expressing grief and complex thoughts, Zubul actually comes out and says, "We're all just human." They're still human. And at that beginning of that episode, Kinger acknowledges that they are all just mind files. That, I guess that's called soma theory, that they're not their real selves. And that really does send home the message that there is no escape. There is no red door that's going to take them out. There is no way to actually leave the digital circus, and that Cain was always right about that. When it comes to being a mind file, you look at an individual like Jax and the trauma that they came in with, as well as what could only be assumed to be their gender dysphoria, or at the very least maybe some gender questioning, some identity issues. It would make sense why Jax came into the circus as an incomplete version of themselves, if you will. That's further... what's the best way to put it? Noticing that when Cain was partially deleted, they regained the ability to swear, meaning that Cain's filters, the rules that they were all playing by, were no longer in effect. And even still, they didn't know what their names were. They couldn't remember what their names were until Cain gives them the presentation. Not knowing what their names were was, to us, the biggest signifier that the mind files are still incomplete. That they still don't have a full recollection of who they are as people or anything beyond. And because of that incompletion, it's what drove Jax to eventually abstract himself. All of the characters that have come before Jax, Ribbit, Kaufmo, Queenie, and really everybody else, all of the other unnamed characters, all of them are driven to abstraction, one way or another. And wanting to acknowledge that really is an autonomous decision made on their parts. You see, they can't die in the traditional sense, as was showcased many times in the show. They don't need to eat. They don't need to sleep. They don't need to breathe. They are just digital apparitions of their real selves. Their real selves of which are still out there in the real world, living their real lives. And so recognizing that they are this incomplete person, that there is no actual way to leave the circus, it does make sense why some of the characters would feel that the only way out is through abstraction. Abstraction is an autonomous decision. It is a permanent decision. And while that can be a hard pill to swallow, it was still their decision to make one way or another. They didn't need nor were relying on the feelings or considerations of the others, because at the end of the day it was their decision to make. And we think it's important to acknowledge that abstraction is synonymous with another form of what we consider death out in the real world. Don't really feel like it's necessary to say that word, but when Jack says phrases like, "It's too late now," or "I don't want to go," it's pretty clear that it is a death by their own decision. And that's okay. When we look at the digital circus as a whole, we recognize that it's been running for a very long time now. For, at least 20 years. I think the program started in 1996, and according to Abigail's Facebook post, it's now currently 2017. So for over 20 years, this program has been running. And we think that what happens is that when a character abstracts, when they delete them, not deleting themselves isn't the right word, when they decide they don't want to be here anymore, the mind files become corrupted. Hence why Pomni even had access to the mind files to begin with. They were a real and tangible construct. She could view them, and that's how she was able to view what Jax was fantasizing in the event of everyone else's abstractions, as well as Jax's own personal backstory. Will this one fit? No. What can go there? Another triangle? When Jax is... where are we going? Yes, the digital circus. Running. 20 years now. Abstractions. The circus is never given an opportunity to reboot. It's never given an opportunity to refresh its cache, so to say. And so we believe that all of these abstractions, these abstracted characters, they don't have the ability to, again, refresh the cache, and therefore these abstractions exist as a result. If the digital circus had the ability to reboot or refresh itself, then all of these abstractions would eventually be cleared out, effectively deleting Ribbit, Kaufmo, Queenie, and ultimately Jax as well. And I guess that brings the grand question of, what does that mean for the rest of the cast? Because, as Zubul said, they're all still human. They have a lot more autonomy now than they ever have, now that Kane has recognized the error of their ways. And things are seemingly much better as of the end credits. But truly, for how long will that actually last? If the program's been running for 20 years, how much longer will it actually run for? How long until there's even maybe some more data leakage? Maybe that was the problem all along, is that running that long created data leaks and allowed for the mind files to become as corruptible as they were in the form of abstraction. Again, being human, maybe these characters decide that they don't want to go on for another 20 years. Because again, they don't age, they don't eat, they don't need to do any of the things that they need to in order to survive like a normal human would. They have all of the abilities that Kinger has pointed out to them. They can manifest their own realities, they can regen health and make the rules as they please, but again, for how long will they want to do that? And when you've experienced all that there is to experience in the digital circus, when you've created all of the things that you could possibly create, when you are existing in this microcosm, this little pocket universe in an infinite void, what then? What will ultimately happen? And we think that eventually all of the characters will, in one way or another, decide Jax was right and that this is the only true way to go. And again, that's a decision to be respected. It's not one that we have to like or agree with, but it is one that was not ours to make in the first place. And as I suppose they say, c'est la vie. So that's more or less how we feel about the digital circus going forward. We're not really much of a theorist. We're just consuming the media that Gooseworks created, the art that they made, and trying to come up with our own meaning from it, come up with our own ideas and interpretations of what their art means for us. So we're going to go ahead and finish this piece out. We don't really think we have any much more to contribute, so we appreciate the time that you took to hear the whimsical thoughts of just a fan of someone else's work, and we hope that everyone is enjoying their day today. Take care, and we will see you when we see you next.